So the ESG is environmental, social, and governance. And the idea is that if you are an investor and you want to preferentially put your money towards firms that make commitments to be better stewards of the earth, look out for, have more diverse boards, membership, not engage in places that have shady governance, then you have a fund that does that. It's become one of the fastest growing segments of the investment community. That in and of itself, shouldn't really matter at all, because you've got a whole bunch of choices. Do I want to invest in small cap stocks, mid cap stocks, international fund? It's a big investment class, and it may not be right for you, but that's all it is.
There is not a criteria that says, here is what ESG is. I think if you were to ask the bulk of Americans what ESG stands for, I think they would struggle to figure that out. I mean, it stands for environmental, social governance, whatever that means. Very, very undefined, which is always concerning. In my opinion, it has absolutely no place in the markets and in the economic, especially in our retirement plans. And the biggest issue that I have with ESG is the lack of definition, the lack of transparency, the lack of honesty.
You can find any number of studies that say that ESG funds have slightly outperformed the market. You can find ones that say the others. If I'm very honest about it, and myself and Juan Vargas had introduced a bill last term to say we really need to come up with a consistent set of definitions for what ESG is. Because if I say I want to invest in tech stocks, we know what that is. If I say I want to invest in ESG stocks, the example I sometimes use is, suppose that I have a company that makes solar panels using Chinese slave labor in another country that mines coal and pays $30 an hour in a union mine shop. Which one is the better ESG company?
The preliminary data shows that, look at Q4 of 22. ESG funds that actually talk about being and tout themselves as being ESG funds lost $2 billion of American taxpayer monies in pension funds. That's concerning when the bulk of the Americans don't even know what ESG is, and it has no place, and they weren't warned that the fund manager, the people making decisions, as the fiduciary, I might add, are investing in these ESG funds.
There's been a very organized effort led by a group called the State Financial Officers Foundation, which is a dark money group that has been putting money in to try to get state treasurers, or to pass laws that would ban state treasurers from investing state pension funds in ESG programs. There's been some analysis, like I think Texas was one of the ones that did this, and they passed the law, they blocked it. The Texas pension fund is now paying the price for that rule, because there's now fewer people who are eligible to offer financial products to the Texas pension fund, which means, surprise, surprise, they're able to bid at a higher price because there's less competition in their space. So you're now seeing, I think the analysis I saw, don't quote me on this exactly, but it was like a 0.6% reduction in the returns that you're seeing in the Texas pension fund. It's not because we can say categorically that ESG was delivering higher returns. It's because if you block competition, guess what? People take advantage of the fact that there's less competition and they price higher. So who's getting hurt by this? The folks who depend on that pension fund.
Where does it stop? What happens if I tell my fundraiser, hey, I'm pro-life. I only want you to invest with people who don't believe in killing babies. My goodness gracious, the other side would go wild and they would call me every name in the book, and right? So they hide behind this ESG. Now, what you're going to find is no one, which I find very, very ironic, no one is going to say, this is the ABC fund and we are ESG compliant, or our driving factor for your return on your investment is ESG. They don't make it that blatant, which again is concerning. What are you hiding? So it's buried in their liberal agendas. It's buried in conference rooms. It's not transparent.
Milton Friedman, he created this theory that the only thing that matters for investing is that, what matters for a company is profits, that a company has no greater obligation other than their obligations to shareholders. And you should look at the value of a company purely in terms of return to shareholders. Whatever you think of the University of Chicago School, there is nothing else in your life that you choose to spend your money on that you make that evaluation on. When you chose, if you own a house, when you chose where to live, was the only factor that went in, I just want a cheap house, right? Or was the only factor, I want a house in a neighborhood that's going to appreciate? When you go to the grocery store, do you only buy generic peanut butter because you know that from a value perspective, you should not pay for that more expensive name brand stuff? Like, we spend money for a whole host of reasons. And if you as an individual think, I would like to invest in a company that does things above and beyond just focusing on quarterly profits, that may be a good decision, it may be a bad decision, but it should be your decision.
The fund managers are supposed to be the fiduciary and always do what's in the best interest of the client. The goal of investing is return on your investment, not the Democrats' liberal agenda.
I think we as regulators, when we say, okay, markets are demanding something and companies are offering a product that they claim will serve that need, we should provide objective tests that verify that people are being honest about what that is, right? And so, that was the effort of this legislation that I mentioned that Juan Vargas and I introduced. It said, the Securities and Exchange Commission really, should be out there, and this is what we're trying to compel them to do, to say, we're going to come up with a coherent set of standards. So if you say this is an ESG product, we need to define what that is. And it may not be a perfect definition, but let's make sure that it's an agreed definition.
Listen, I spent 35 years in the financial planning world. I'm very familiar with this. We have this thing called a prospectus. Put it right out. Say it loud, say it proud, right? Don't hide it. That would be the best way. And then we really could track, okay, you're a fund manager, you believe in ESG principles. All right, it's America, you can believe in that, but say it loud, say it proud for all your investors to know. Then we could say, all right, here's a growth fund that invests ESG. Here's a growth fund that does not adhere to the ESG principles. Oh, gee, let's make a comparison. They'll never do that because they get their butts kicked.